The drug epidemic is a real epidemic, right? It doesn't matter age, weight, sex, gender, race, it will kill you.
Oh,
We have to revert back when it comes to criminology and criminal justice to the punishment and the crime matching. I've said this before. If a kid's stealing a Snickers bar because he's hungry, that's on us to figure out how to feed that child and not put him in jail. Like, that's not right. But if the kid has a high-powered rifle and he's shooting 20 rounds through a house because he's mad about a drug deal, that kid needs to go to jail, and that kid needs to be punished appropriately. And I think right now, we're not doing that right.
sure.
3830, he got shots being fired, active shots being fired.
Now, at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is stop people from being hurt. Like, that's it. We want the people that are shooting guns to not shoot guns anymore and to get charged appropriately, and we want it to stop. And it seems like there's different facets and avenues that don't want that same outcome.
Speaking of staffing, Portland's missing, is it 30 positions or 30%?
No, I think you're right. I think it's about 25 to 30 positions just in the city of Portland for police, I think.
And the equipment's amazing. The city's amazing as a place. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's a twofold approach. One, I think it's
So we walk into Becky's and you tell me the story of the boys firing the AK-47s. Take us
Sure.
back to this.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that you have to talk like this now, but it's like narrow it down. It used to be a time where it'd be like, and I started as a cop in 2003. So when you had someone shoot a rifle, it may be like once or twice a year, but everybody would remember the street and the person that did it and the charges that they got because it was one or two times a year. Now it's like when you bring that up, it's like, well, what time was that? Was it the Christmas time, AK-47 firing through the house? The wrong house of a lady and her children trying to sleep? Or was it the Christmas Eve shooting where they shot 15 or 16 rounds or whatever it was to another house, a wrong house where people are trying to sleep? It's like you can't even narrow it down anymore. And that's when for a small town like Portland, it's changed, or crimes have changed.
The other thing I remember about that story was the pursuit. So these were some kids and they're going through city resources, and you're obviously, thank you, putting your life on the line with these armed kids shooting these rounds to try to apprehend them. And you're not necessarily getting helped. You're almost getting hindered.
Yeah, it's a weird concept. You would think that, everybody involved, adult version wise, whether it's parents or, teachers or guardians or whoever it may be that's involved, would want to put a stop and hinder more shootings and violent crime. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way. It feels as though you're just it's like a recidivism of the same thing over and over and over again. And at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is stop people from being hurt. Like, that's it. We want the people that are shooting guns to not shoot guns anymore and to get charged appropriately, and we want it to stop. And it seems like there's different facets and avenues that don't want that same outcome, and whether that's people trying to help in different ways or not, at the end of the day, you can't argue with statistics. And over the last 2 or 3 years, in our little city anyway, you can see the crime rate has spiked in violent crime.
It's sort of an interesting thing. It's like a tale of two cities, this Maine crime story, because everybody sort of assumes, like, one thing about Maine, no crime, lowest murder rates in the country. When it is a murder, everybody knows, like, when the shot is fired, I bet that was Betty, and yet in Portland, you've got this spike in crime to the degree where I think it was this week, the city council is talking about fining business owners for not having anybody in their stores because they can't get anybody to be in the stores because the stores are kind of in a post-apocalyptic kind of feces, syringe,
I get you. Yeah, I just saw that the other day, and I think it was the press or something. They ran an article on it. I saw also they had an open mic, and I don't remember when this was. It was in city council, maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, where business owners came in to talk about, I think Monument Square specifically, some of the issues that they had been encountering, which was people defecating on the steps, used needles, overdoses, fights, stabbings, Some of their staff workers have been chased, I think, and assaulted or threatened to be stabbed. But all these business owners kind of got up and were like, something has to change because this isn't working. And watching that as a civilian and not necessarily a cop, but like just hearing about it, it's always sad because you think like those are just people trying to survive and make food for people to have a good night out, and they're afraid they're going to get stabbed. And it wasn't always like that, right? I mean, we can remember 2003, 2004. You always have your local, a couple guys that drink too much, or you have your alcoholics. Or I think the fentanyl and heroin crisis has definitely affected Portland, as we have most of the social services in the state, right in the city. So you're starting to see
Right.
more
So
of an
you're
influx of that.
you're a little bit of a magnet because of that concentration of resources
Yes.
that draw you in. But also, it seems like a lot of which is often the case. A lot of well-meaning, almost the most conscientious of rules seems to have the least desired of outcomes. So there was a law that said you can't be arrested if you identify as homeless if you're guilty of criminal or arrested for criminal trespass and other open.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah. Yeah. They have a Good Samaritan law too. Also, like if someone's overdosing, obviously you can call and they won't charge for the drugs that are on scene if it's a usable amount. That they have laws like that as well. Um, but during COVID, things seem to change, right? We talked about jails closing and essentially closing, not taking anybody in because of COVID. That made it almost impossible, for not just us, but the entire country, right? You can't arrest people. So what are you doing? You're writing tickets for people for, ag assault, like don't stab anybody else, or, don't trespass anywhere else. Here's your ticket. Like we mean business. So that made it extremely difficult. And I think it just added to what we're seeing now. It's like we haven't really come out of that yet, I don't think.
What about this needle giveaway thing?
Yeah, the you talk about the needle handouts, like the Ray kits that do. Yeah, they used to make cards as well. I don't know if you knew this or not, but they had cards that went with it. But it was like how to take the drug and how to not overdose. If you overdose, the recovery positions, and then Narcan, and it was like a pack. I don't know if that changed, but it used to be like a pack.
It's
Like
like Julie,
had
the
like
cruise director for your trip. Here's how you
they
get
yeah.
help.
Well, they had like they had like cups that you could mix like mix the narcotic with or whatever. They had everything like you could use that was sterile. And I think it was like essentially I think that it was so that they wouldn't continue with like
Doing it in
bloodborne
dirty work.
pathogen
Yeah,
disease.
right.
Yeah, I think it was like trying to hinder the AIDS and hepatitis and all that. But I don't know if it turned back into needles. I'm not sure, but now it sounds like they're doing needles as well, or more needles than they were before.
I've been in healthcare in my career, and I've had exposure to a lot of really fancy drug treatment facilities. And one of the rules that is consistent across all of them is do not enable your loved one. Do not, even if you're a millionaire, do not give your, troubled son $1. Even if he's at your door crying, the only way to help someone back is for them to, what they call, hit rock bottom. What role does rock bottom play in the programming that you've witnessed so far?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. So when I was running the community, I run the detectives division now, but 4 or 5 years ago, I ran our division called the Community Policing Unit, or CPU, and I set up a cross training in Boston and with our CPU unit, and we went down and we did a couple of days, I think, with them, and their methodology and approach is a lot different than ours. It's called Mercy Road or Hope Road, I think, but essentially they have apps, and I could be messing this up a little bit, but this is kind of my take on it. They
We'll
have like an
cover it
app.
after the fact. Don't worry.
They have like an app on their phone. So you're a cop, you go, Brenda Samsonite or Jimmy Samsonite's using drugs again. They can look and say, okay, there's a bed open 10 minutes from here, and it's a detox facility. So they can hook them up with a bed or her up with a bed, and with their consent, take them to that detox facility and immediately start the detoxification program right then. And on top of that, they have home placements where they can learn how to like cook and clean and do bills. And because a lot of the people that aren't, going to work every day, and a lot of people that are using have as a vast history of child abuse, substance abuse, mental health issue, and those aren't addressed. So the product we have now is you take them to the hospital discharges them, they get 2 pills, they take their pills, they go back to, using drugs or, seeing things that they shouldn't be seeing because they're, the chemicals are all off. Well, they have a whole road to recovery where they're now writing their bills. They can bake a cake. They can do their billing. They know how to brush their teeth. Like these are fundamental things that you and I do every day, but a lot of times they're not ingrained in some people.
Not up on it yet. So kind of a
Yeah. So they're
less
actually, at the end of the
enablement of
day,
the
they're
use
actually,
and more enablement of what you might do instead of using.
sure. So they actually have self-esteem. Now they have a job and now they have an apartment and now they can cook for themselves and they know how to clean and they can write a bill and now they have their credit score back. And now they're buying a car, now they're getting their kids back. It's a process that we don't have now. And our process now is go to jail or go to the hospital for a day. Those are our options. And I don't know what we have for beds in the state, but it is not working at all.
I want to talk about the jail part. So one of the stats that I was sort of dismayed by was the percentage of people arrested in Portland that then are right back on the street. They don't end up in jail. They don't end up in court. Where do they go? What happens if you've got them in the car? You've done all of your record keeping on your government issued, tough book, whatever, and now you pull up at Cumbie Jail. What happens next?
I mean, there's a lot of different things that can happen. Now, technically, like 25 years ago, you would book them. Let's say it's just an OUI. They would get booked and processed, and the bail commissioner would set a bail of $500 or $560, whatever it was. During COVID, that
500 for the
that went off the
courts and
window.
60 for the commissioner.
Yeah, during COVID, that essentially, like, I don't even know what happened during COVID. COVID, the jails kind of shut down. They didn't take anybody really. They only took a certain amount. If they tested positive for COVID, you had to go through the protocol of like dropping them off, and then we wore masks, and then 6 feet, and then double, triple vax, quadruple vaxxed. We did everything. Um, that didn't seem to work. But ever since then, it's kind of changed. Like the whole methodology has changed of the jails, and I also think it's staffing. Like there's staffing issues all over the place. So the jails are understaffed. The police officers are understaffed. So an arrest for criminal trespass, they go to jail. They get a $60 bail, maybe. Maybe they bail right there and they're back out an hour later. But very rarely do they set the bail high enough that they're held to see a judge because it's such a minor infraction now. A lot of times they don't even get arrested. They'll get a ticket for criminal trespass or criminal mischief, and then just released for a court date later. And I mean, I don't know what the courts were like across the country, but we were thousands of court cases behind due to COVID.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of a COVID hangover, like we haven't sort of snapped back.
I think so. I think, I always thought, there's thousands of cases that had to be I mean, how are you going to catch up? How are you ever going to catch up if you're 20 or 30,000 cases behind? If you're full staff now, if you're fully working every day, it's essentially like you're never gonna catch up to that. I don't think.
Yeah.
But I think
So
we're
you get a
we're
little
seeing
bit of
that
a
now.
learned helplessness. Like
You'd have to do. You remember the movie, the show Night Court back in like the 80s, the
of
comedian there.
course.
You would essentially have to have court 24/7, 365, I think, to catch up. I think. And I don't know what like the bigger city, like a New York or a Boston, like I have no idea how they're ever going to catch up. But just a small, Maine being a small state and Portland being a small city, I don't know how you catch up with 1,000 cases being behind.
Talk about the subset. I think it was a big number, maybe 30% or 20 something percent of arrests that bounce off the jail and end up at the medical center.
Those are usually for mental health. Like we'll have mental health calls. So either suicidal ideations or, they take drugs or they have prior medical issues. They get taken to the hospital by us or, MedQ, depending on how severe the injuries are.
Yeah.
And that's probably that 25 or 30% of those arrests too. That's a high
And
number,
then
but
they
I think
go there and
probably
then and they talk about what happens when they get there.
well, they get treated by the medical staff. So it depends on, let's just say they use drugs. I use, the ask an intake question. When was the last time you used heroin? An hour ago. Then they're afraid you're going to overdose, right? Because it could be in your system, which makes sense. And they take them up to the hospital, and then they'll go through like a detox where they're trying to figure out how much heroin is in their system, and maybe they have an infection. So the doc will look at them and say, this is all hypothetical, of course, and look at their arm and say, okay, you have a severe infection in your arm that needs to be treated, and like you can't go to jail because you could die from your infection. So then they'll hold them there and treat them for their infection for however long they need to be held there. And if it's a serious crime, let's say it's a murder, we would sit there with them for that time period. And if it's not, if it's if it's someone that's spray painting a wall, we would just write them a ticket, and then they would go back out on the street when they're done.
Are you? It's amateur night here for me, but if that happened enough time, I would think on the street there would become a kind of a known thing that if you declare yourself ill, you're going to get a ticket and walk out of the medical center, and if you don't, then you're going to go into jail.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, you have your, 1 or 2% that do that. It's like we call it playing the game. It's like they know what to say, the keywords to say in order to get out, and that's on us, I think, as administration, to try to figure out how to mitigate all that. But at the end of the day, it's all about trying to get them better. Um, but some of the jails down in the Boston and New York areas, they actually have medical centers attached to their jails. Like they have a medical facilities. We don't really have that. We have, I know, I don't want to talk about the jail at all, but I don't think we have the facilities like they have down in the bigger cities, which I think you need staffing for, and that's the biggest issue we have here in Maine, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of staffing, Portland's missing? Is it 30 positions or 30%?
No, I think you're right. I think it's about 25 to 30 positions just in the city of Portland for police, I think.
And the equipment's amazing. The city's amazing as a place. What do you think is driving that?
It's funny. I think it's like a twofold approach. One, I think it's, the public perception of police, right? So you have, and
It's a
I always
little bit
equate
like
it to,
post-Vietnam. You come back, you've served your country, and some little lady spits on you. Like, what the?
sure. Yeah, well, I always equate it to like the public opinion of like 2 or 3 people that take over the world. Like someone does something bad or awful, and it's like, say it's a police officer or a teacher or a doctor. It's like, and everybody hates the doctors, right? How dare the doctors do that? Or here, how dare the bank tellers do that? Or the teacher, oh my goodness, you see what happened to that teacher? He did this or she did that. It doesn't necessarily mean every teacher's that, or every doctor is that, or every police officer is that. But the public perception seems to change. And then people are kind of shunned, like, oh, well, cops are dealing with more than ever. And then you add in the negativity and the, protests or long hours or, cops getting shot at a higher rate. And you dealing with more civil lawsuits and civil liability. And people go, well, shoot, I can go work at Starbucks as a barista and make the same. So why am I going to go get shot at? Why am I going to go get shot at a night shift? And it's also generational. Like I've met people that, are 34, 35 living at home with their parents. And that just wasn't a thing, probably in your generation as well. At 18, 19, you're off to college and you have your own place at 20, right? And you're out of college and you're trying to do your best to buy your first home. That's changed. It's like now kids are 34 living in their parents' basement playing Call of Duty. It's just, they don't need the job. They can work, they can work at the gas station and they don't need anything.
Drive a little Uber Eats instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just changed. It's like the methodology of the drive, I think, for the generational gaps has changed.
What percentage of a line officer's life is paperwork? Filling out reports, booking.
We call it the lifeline of police work now. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be very simple to make an arrest and drop them off and leave, and we'll make another arrest and drop them off and leave. And we had a lateral hire. I won't mention his name, but he's from New York City, and he was shocked. So they were doing paperwork back in 2003, like we do now. Like they were like, you make an arrest, you're with them the whole shift, like you're done. So he was shocked when he came in. He was like, you guys make 6 arrests in a night? They're like, yeah. He's like, you would never do that. And they call them tours down there. Like our tour, you have 1 arrest and you're done. Like you can't do all the paperwork in time. And so now, 20 years later, we're now experiencing that, where there's so much paperwork that goes into arrest reports, ATN reports, triple I's, SBI's, everything's attached now to go to court. I mean, you have an arrest for a criminal mischief. It's, 10, 15 pages and it's 2 or 3 hours of work. Whereas before it'd be 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
That's astonishing. When I think about what would motivate someone to be a policeman, at least the kind that I would want, the judgment and the orientation that I would want, that level of administrative bloat, I think, would chase that person away.
You're probably right. That's actually a very good point. I never really thought about that, but you're right. It's like the writing in the mundaneness of it all. It's not what people think it is, right? It's mostly paperwork and writing.
There's a I actually have seen this now in family services, where there's an elaborate training and sort of documentation process to become a foster parent, but then no real judgment about the character of the person. It's just if you've done all these steps and attended all these trainings. Same thing with a lot of the school stuff. It sort of rhymes with that. All of this work to. Do you feel like the court proceedings go better with the documentations that are added?
I don't know. I don't think court for me has changed that much. I don't think it's better or worse than it was 20 years ago. I think again the COVID thing really messed up messed everything up. I think it did push thousands of cases, and they're trying to adjudicate some and move some, and that not for nothing, the court's never been through that. They haven't been through a pandemic or whatever you want to call it to shut down the world for I don't know a year and a change. So I don't think they've ever been through that. So I don't think you put blame essentially
No,
at the
no
court, but
blame.
I don't know how.
No
Yeah,
response.
yeah, I don't know how you catch up. Like I don't know how the paperwork aspect would change that. It's kind of the same to me. It appears to be the same. It's just I think some of the computer systems are wonky. As before, everything's pen and paper. I think some of the computer systems that people think make things faster and easier, not they don't necessarily do that.
It seems like we have a lot of different systems touching the same person.
Sure.
So you have your own dispatch and record system in Portland, different from the system at the jail.
Oh yeah, all the systems are. I think most of the systems are different in the state. I think some departments are similar, or they have the same systems as the state has. Ours is different than the states, and the states is different than I think like some of the smaller towns. But you're right. I think you were talking about making like a one system that like everybody could use and adapt would be it would be interesting and make things a lot easier. I think.
Make it a lot harder to do a crime in one town and then show up at the next, for sure.
It would be impossible, right? Because your name, you would know the name and everything that they did.
And then you'd also have the percentage of time spent doing typey, first name,
Sure.
last name, date of birth, social
Initials,
security
yeah.
number, home address. Talk about the uh, these wonderful social service agencies that we've got in Portland. It seems like we have a lot of them. That we are lucky to have Preble Street and all these wonderful gatherings of well-meaning money and people. What's the level of coordination with you and with each other that you witness? Because you're kind of on the street. You're the closest to an expert witness to the vulnerable community that these guys are all trying to solve, because you're there watching it from their perspective. How coordinated are they?
Well, it's funny. I'm trying to think of when Pineland closed, or when the 80s, 70s or 80s when they closed they called it the mental institution, but a mental health hospital.
Hospital.
Um, yeah, when they closed those, there was no in between. So when those hospitals were closed, the people that were being treated there were released, and they were released to the cities. They weren't released to Durham, Maine. They're released to Portland and probably Lewiston and Bangor, the cities that have the most social services. And this, I was a child then. I remember listening to my parents talk that they didn't think that was right, and this is like the 80s. Like the Portland completely changed then, and of course I was a child then. But listening to my mom and my father and mother talk, like this isn't right. We're just these people need help, and they're being released now to an area that potentially could be or lead them to be vulnerable to drugs, alcohol, coercion, sexual assaults, and essentially there was no overreach. It was like, well, check into the day bed and make sure you guys have a place. But these are people that have severe mental health issues that can't even tie their shoes or have a hard time speaking, and now you enter in heroin and cocaine and alcohol and people that want to sexually traffic you.
Yeah,
It's
I
not a
remember
recipe
that
for
it was one flew over the cuckoo's nest. It was this Shutter Island. There was this the institution is coming for us. We've got to free people. And of course, I'm sure there were examples in any institution of terrible behavior and mistakes. But I'm sure that what we're witnessing now is this overreaction that we say, okay, let's have nothing, let's shut everything down, and then these incredibly vulnerable people with no life skills are, as you just point out, sort of falling on the mercy of wherever there's a highest likelihood of connecting one meal to the next, which is probably in the city.
Sure. Yeah. So that's I mean, you still see that. You'll see people come from, we had a story that I use sometimes was a story that I heard from my boss. He was working at a shelter as an overtime detail to make sure people aren't going to fight over whatever. And there was a guy there that didn't really fit in, and he asked him, he's like, "Hey, like, where are you from?" And we do that from time to time. If a person, you ever see a person and they don't seem like they're living on the street, they might be well dressed, or like, what are they doing down there? And so we'll talk to them. Hey, what are you doing here? And the guy said, "Oh, I'm from Las Vegas, and I need a heart transplant. And the only way I can afford one is to declare homelessness here, and they'll give me a heart transplant and then or a heart surgery, and then I'm going to go back to Vegas." So he had just come here for 6 months or whatever it was to use the healthcare system to get, it was like a heart surgery or some sort of heart transplant to go back to his job in Vegas or wherever Las Vegas he lived. But that's a legitimate story, and that was a legitimate person. And there, I mean, just that story itself shows you how flawed and sad it is that one, he can't afford the surgery. Two, he's going to come all the way here and change his whole life up to stay alive. And three, he has to declare that he's homeless and then eat at the soup kitchen to survive.
States need to know that there's a difference between being a safety net and being a tragedy magnet. That, if your safety net gets high enough that nobody can bounce anywhere, pretty soon you're going to attract people in, because the safety net is a luxury. Our safety net is someone else's, meal ticket, luxury pass, heart transplant.
I've always had like this weird dream in my head where I feel like if you had a farm and like animals and processes, and they could bake and they could do tractoring and they could do farming, that a lot of the people that are in the inner cities would probably flourish. I don't think the city necessarily is the place for people with mental health and drug abuse. I think being in a cultural area where you go out and fish and you go out and catch your lobster, and I feel like that would be a natural healing as opposed to being in the city next to
Yeah,
all the
predatory.
sirens and lights.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a pipe dream in my head. Who knows? It'll probably never work. But in my
Well,
mind, I feel
there
like that
there
would
are
be a better
examples
way.
of it throughout history of sanitariums, quiet places where you learn a craft and use that to get the demons out of your head. So I don't think it's a pipe dream. I think you're onto something. Uh, when we get a new governor in a year, the city is the city, and then there's a lot of cities, and then there's the state police. What do you think the biggest near-term change in criminal justice policy should be that gets the most lift from the perspective of people who are in your shoes trying to, as you say, keep people safe?
Yeah, I think we have to revert back when it comes to criminology and criminal justice to the punishment and the crime matching. I've said this before. If a kid's stealing a Snickers bar because he's hungry, that's on it's on us to figure out how to feed that child and not put him in jail. Like, that's not right. But if the kid has a high-powered rifle and he's shooting 20 rounds through a house because he's mad about a drug deal, that kid needs to go to jail, and that kid needs to be punished appropriately. And I think right now, everybody has a stake in making this better. We're not doing that right. So, the kid that fires off 15 rounds from a high-powered rifle is out in 2 days, and his bail is, $500, and he doesn't do any jail time, and they don't hold him. That empowers that kid at 17, 16, 17 to do worse things. And you can't get much worse than that besides murdering people.
It's ever using it
Um,
better. Yeah.
exactly. So, and getting better at your craft. And make no mistake about it, these kids are getting better at their craft. So we have to figure that out. And I don't know where you start with that, but the punishment has to fit the crime with severe, dangerous weapons. And I don't, in that whole, you could do a whole podcast on how these kids are getting them. But that's a whole other podcast. But it does blow my mind. Again, if they're stealing a Snickers bar, they're speeding in their dad's car late at night, you can fix that. That's a parenting issue. That's a ticket. We get that. But if you have an AK-47 or an AR-15 and you're shooting 20 rounds through a lady's house that's trying to feed her kids, those people need to be held accountable. We got to figure that one out quick.
It seems like the sort of social justice warrior class has confused the idea of an explanation and an excuse. Like, it may be that there's an explanation behind why that kid shot that gun and did that crime. And it may be a very human, heart-rending explanation, but it's not an excuse. It doesn't mean you don't go to jail when you're in a shooting. That would be a great. Instead of, I had a bunch of people say that, the governor should get in front of the steps. Just had a guy, Capitol, say education is going like this and it's an emergency. I could imagine a governor saying something like, explanations are not excuses. And when you do this kind of crime, no excuses.
Yeah, I like I can't remember who used to say, but punishment has to fit the crime. Like it's as simple as that. Like it, and again, I don't have all the answers. I'm just a simple cop. But there's some days you definitely scratch your head and you're like, this can't. Those 20 rounds could have killed 10 people in this home. You could have killed 4 or 5 people very easily. Some of them infants. We're talking inches, and there are holes in the walls like this, is blowing. I gave an interview to the press once where I said our evidence technicians were processing, whatever it was, a 223 maybe, or maybe it was a 9, but the casings were in these little shoes because the kids were in the playground. So the snow imprints of little kids' shoes were there, and they were taking these casings out of these little size 5 shoes, knowing that playground, those kids live in the house that they're shooting up. Like, those kids use that playground, and there's something about the they don't care mentality that we have to fix. And it's just going to get worse if we let it continue. Um, that and the drug epidemic that's killing us, literally and figuratively killing us.
On the drug side, does anything work other than having to just dry out in the can? Does
I know the drug epidemic is a real epidemic, right? It's like it kills. Doesn't matter age, weight, sex, gender, race. It will kill you. And it's interesting enough. It kind of brings families together. Because of the loss of their loved ones, and it doesn't matter their walk in life. It affects everybody, whether you're a doctor or a senator or the president, right? Everybody has someone in their home that has an addiction of some sort, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, heroin, or fentanyl. I don't know. We've been battling this. The drug war started in the 70s and 80s allegedly. It still goes on now. I know what's next. They have drugs now that kill you on contact. So the fentanyl can touch you and can kill you immediately. We're always like, what's the next drug? And it just explode your body. Like, what's next? It used to be Coke. Now it's fentanyl. In like 10 years, it's going to be some other crazy drug that you just explode on contact. But nothing seems to work. I don't think making it easier for people to use drugs is helping anything. I don't think it helps the person using. I don't think it helps the people around them. I think getting those people the mental health that they need on top of detox beds is what's going to help us in that area, and we don't have either, really.
Is there a kind of a bed that's a dry out bed that could be sentenced more liberally? I think there's a stigma against jail. Like 3 hots in a cot is not bad.
If they could add in a detox, like we Portland started a behavioral health division where it's social workers that go out and help people in their time of need, whether it's mental health crisis or drug intervention. And they're, I can't talk good enough good things about these people. They're some of the best salt of the earth people I've ever met in my life. And without them, it would be even worse. They do such a good job trying to get these people the services that are needed. Because at the end of the day, the cop's job is to show up and go, is it a crime or isn't it a crime? Right? Does this guy need to go to jail or does he need to go to the hospital? Other than that, the cops are leaving. The mental health liaison can come in and say, okay, it's not a crime. He's seeing things, but it's because he's using cocaine and bath salts. I can take him to the hospital. We can get him into detox and hopefully he stays. Now, maybe he stays the 15th time, but that's going to take 14 other times of failure to get him to stay that one time. But I think having more beds available for them would be paramount for Maine.
That's huge. Lieutenant Nick Goodman, public servant extraordinaire. Thank you for what you do to keep all of us safe in Portland for more than 20 years. And thank you for joining me on Maine for Keeps.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Maine for Keeps. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on social media, click and share with your friends, or get on to mainforkeeps.com. If you have ideas for new content or podcast guests, or if you'd like to give us some money to support the effort, be sure to click and send. We're at team@mainforkeeps.com, and I'm at jb@mainforkeeps.com. Thanks. See you soon.